Is this for real? That is the question we ask ourselves more often than ever before as artificial intelligence seeps its way into every crevice of our lives. Each image we see, every piece we read, every friend request we receive, we wonder, is it real? Is there a human being behind it or a bot? Now, into this uncharted wilderness of technology, my dear friend bravely ventured, setting up for herself an online dating profile, and her first task was to submit a photo of herself so people could see she was a real human being and not a bot. She chose a picture I had taken of her standing in front of a giant heart-shaped rock with my two adorable doggies on either side of her. How could you go wrong with that? Well, this picture captured the interest of a dog lover who really wanted to meet this beautiful, laughing woman with the cute dogs. He also wanted to meet the dogs. She had to confess that they weren't really her dogs, and he instantly began to wonder, was she for real? Posing with dogs that were not hers? What other deception was at play? Was she a Russian spy? Filled with doubt, he agreed to meet her anyway, although he was a little suspicious he might be being led into some kind of scam where maybe he would next be asked to Venmo her some gas money. But when they did meet, he learned that not only was she real, she was really amazing. They hit it off and have been building a beautiful relationship for almost a year now. However, up until a week ago, I had not met the guy and I had my own doubts as a friend. Was he for real? I knew some of the basic things about him, but what I didn't know was, could he be a real friend to us and we to him? Now, we couldn't know this until meeting him and spending a good amount of time together. The first thing we had to see, of course, was how he was with the dogs. And if you're a dog lover, you understand what I mean. But this guy, the minute he arrived, he got right down on the ground and loved on our fur babies. He passed the first test. Next, we went on a hike. We showed him, of course, the infamous Heart Rock from the picture, and he told us his version of the story with all the misunderstandings and suspicions. We realized this guy is smart, he's funny, easy to chat with. We liked him, but could he really be our friend? That evening, we did what human beings have been doing since the discovery of cooked food. We gathered at the table and shared a meal, and that is where we learned the truth. This man was the real deal, a truly good person. You could tell by the way he laughed, asked questions, listened deeply, shared his own story. We had sat down as brand new acquaintances, but we got up as friends, the real kind. This experience shaped my understanding of this week's lesson, which is Luke's gospel account of what happened on the day of Jesus' resurrection. Now, according to Luke, two of Jesus' followers were walking the 7-mile road from Jerusalem to Emmaus, talking the entire way about the extraordinary events of the past 3 days, the arrest, crucifixion, and now rumors of resurrection. A stranger joined them on the walk, someone who, amazingly, had managed to not have heard the story that had all of Jerusalem buzzing, so they told him everything they knew about this Jesus of Nazareth. The strange man proceeded to educate them about the scriptural significance of all that had transpired, which probably made them wonder, is this guy for real? He knows both nothing and everything. Who is he? But they listened, and when they got to the house, of course, they invited the stranger inside because that was the only hospitable thing to do, right, at that late hour when every weary traveler desperately needs a bit of food and a soft bed. And then something incredible happens. As Luke tells it, this is chapter 24, beginning with verse 30. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, were not our hearts burning within us when he was talking to us on the road while he was opening the scriptures to us? That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, the Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon. Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. While they were talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and terrified and thought that they were seeing a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you frightened? And why do doubts arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet. See that it is I myself. Touch me and see, for a ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have." And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. While in their joy they were disbelieving and still wondering, he said to them, "Have you anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. Then he said to them, "These are my words that I spoke to you while I was still with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms must be fulfilled." Then he opened their minds to understand the scriptures, and he said to them, "Thus it is written that the Messiah is to suffer and to rise from the dead on the third day, and that repentance and forgiveness of sin is to be proclaimed in his name to all nations, beginning from Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things." What gets me about this story is this. The longer the stranger stayed with those folks from Emmaus, the more clearly they were able to see that he was the risen Christ. Now, why did they not notice this on the road as they walked up to 7 miles together listening to him? Why did they only truly see him at the table in the sharing of a meal? And as for the apostles, Peter and the others, why were they so full of doubt when Jesus showed up, only confirming the story they had just heard from those 2 Emmaus people? It was only when he ate the fish that everyone was able to settle down, truly hear him, and see that he was for real. There is just something about food that joins us, not only in mind, but in heart. Maybe it's the slowing down, the sitting down, the way we allow ourselves to focus on what's right there in front of us. At the table, we feel safe enough to let our guard down. We are safe, and we are going to be fed. All is well. With those needs met, we can look at each other in a way that says, "I see you and you see me." What we bring to the table is the essence of being human, our need for food and for fellowship. Soon after this powerful encounter with the risen and hungry Jesus, the early Christian church was established by the very same people who had eaten with him, and it was centered around the table. The symbol of the primitive church was not a cross, it was a fish. Saturday was, of course, still the traditional day of worship and Torah reading in the synagogue, a sacred Jewish tradition that would be maintained. But those who were compelled by the story of the risen Christ also observed the weekly ritual of eating together on Sunday, a collective remembering of those Sunday night mealtime encounters with the newly resurrected Jesus. Because at the table, those first disciples had recognized him. And at the table, we recognize Jesus in one another, and they in us. Where we gather, Jesus is there too. When I serve communion here in my congregation, there is one person who regularly tells me, "Namaste. The divine in me greets the divine in you." Namaste, I say back, because we are seeing Christ in each other, in the giving and receiving of bread, grace, of mutual regard. The act of seeing the bread as sacred reminds us that all food is sacred. The act of seeing each other as divine beings reminds us that we are all created in the image of the divine. Being seen this way is what we long for, to be seen for who we are and accepted, while learning to accept others as they are as well. That's a hard but essential lesson, and I would like to tell you how I first began to learn it. When I was 12, my family relocated halfway across the country. At first, we knew no one in our new town, and it was a lonely time, but thankfully, our new church was hosting a weekly low-cost dinner that anyone could attend. So my dad, my little brother, and I became regular attendees, partly because my mom worked evenings and my dad had no clue how to feed 2 kids on his own, but also because we had a deep need to connect with other people. Of all my memories from that church, I can picture the social hall the best, the huge round tables where we would eat, the industrial dishwasher I got to help unload, the piano where some of us kids would teach each other the songs we knew. And my daddy would sit forever, it seemed, at his round table, soaking up the stories of the new people he was meeting. I remember this one old guy named Jim who took to sitting at our table every week, and I hated this because Jim rarely bathed or washed his clothes. I asked my dad why we had to sit with that guy, and my dad told me, Jim is brilliant and interesting, and also having no family, he is very lonely. This was true. About a year later, Jim died alone in his home, and no one found him for a few days. It was like that. Now, I hate that Jim died alone, but I love that during the last year of his life, he had at least one meal a week with people. And though I questioned it at the time, I now consider it an honor that we got to be Jim's Tuesday night dinner family. I am not so sure he could see Christ in me, but I now realize that I was learning to see Christ in him and also in my dad, who was teaching me to see people as Christ saw them. All of this happened at the table, which is, of course, the only place it could have happened, right? The table may be the only place where we are willing to sit with each other long enough to see and be seen for real. The table is where we get beyond the first impressions, the perfunctory handshakes, the place where we get to know who our neighbors really are. At the table, strangers become friends, friends become dear friends become family. And family, that's what we were always meant to be, children of God, each of us. I think one of the hardest things about the past 4 years is that our patterns of gathering were interrupted. People stopped meeting because it wasn't safe, and once we get out of a habit, it's hard to get back into it. But I think we need to try to get back into the habit of meeting each other and of sharing meals, because we need community as much as we need food. With food alone, we can survive, but only in community can we thrive. At the table, we become real to each other, more than just pics and posts that only show the surface of our lives. At the table, we share who and how we really are, something deeper than those quick exchanges we make in passing. At the table, we become truly present to each other, giving our dining companions the chance to see a miracle, which is that Christ is risen. He is risen indeed, as we learn to see him in each other. That's why our church has started the practice of gathering for supper once a month, inviting kids from our after-school program, their families, and anyone in the community who hungers for food and fellowship. It isn't just a free meal. It's an invitation to meet Jesus, who shows up when we gather. I say Jesus is risen, you say he is risen indeed, but if you want to believe it, come to the table. You'll see. People sit down as strangers and stand up as friends. Stories are shared, people are seen and heard, phones are put away, people linger at the table in no hurry to leave, kids help grown-ups wash the dishes, someone shows a little boy how to run the floor sweeper, telling him it's a blast, and it is. They are both laughing. As I look around the room, seeing each little story unfolding, I begin to recognize what is really happening. The risen Christ has graced us with his presence and his peace. The guy I talk about every week, Jesus, he is there, and he is for real. Maybe I'll see you at supper. Peace be with you.